That detail about Steve Glickman's discovery already sets up a story that is both tender and startling. It touches on love, aging, memory loss, and intimacy in ways people rarely talk about. Here's a full-length article, around 1,600 words, crafted in a flowing narrative style for YouTube, without headings, so it reads like one continuous piece. Steve Glickman thought he had finally reached the point where a decision had to be made. His father's Alzheimer's was progressing, the lapses of memory more frequent, the moments of clarity shorter and less predictable. It wasn't just about forgetting names or where he had put his glasses anymore. His father sometimes wandered into the street, forgot how to turn off the stove, and once locked himself out of the house in the middle of the night. Steve, who lived nearby and visited often, felt the growing weight of responsibility. His mother, who had been married to his father for more than 5 decades, was still sharp and capable, but Steve could see the exhaustion on her face. The constant care, the unpredictability, the worry that something dangerous might happen, he wondered how much longer she could keep it up. Assisted living seemed like the only humane option, the best balance between safety and dignity. And yet, life has ways of throwing reminders that human beings don't fit neatly into medical categories. Just when Steve felt resolved, he stumbled upon something unexpected, something that made him pause and reconsider everything he thought he knew about his parents' daily lives. It was an afternoon like any other. He had stopped by the house unannounced, arms full of groceries he thought would make things easier for his mom. But instead of finding his father watching television or napping, Steve discovered a reality that left him stunned. His parents were still very much intimate with each other. In fact, as his mother later explained with a mix of embarrassment and pride, they had their own routine, their own sacred time together that kept them connected, alive, and strangely resilient despite the disease that was eating away at memory and recognition. At first, Steve didn't know how to process it. The idea of elderly parents having what his mother coyly referred to as their sexy time felt intrusive, almost uncomfortable, like walking into a room you were never meant to enter. But the more he sat with it, the more he realized that what he had witnessed wasn't just about physical intimacy, it was a testament to their enduring bond. Alzheimer's had stolen names, places, and moments, but somehow it hadn't stolen desire, or the comfort of touch, or the ability to express love through closeness. His parents, even in the face of memory loss, were still husband and wife in the most elemental sense. It's easy for outsiders to reduce Alzheimer's to a list of symptoms and challenges, to think of it only as a decline, an unraveling. But for those inside the circle of caregiving and family, the picture is more complicated. There are flashes of humor, surprising resilience, and moments of beauty. What Steve realized was that moving his father to an assisted living facility might not just be about safety, it might also mean severing a connection that gave both his parents joy, comfort, and perhaps even a reason to keep going. For decades they had built their marriage on routines and rituals, and now, even in this diminished stage of life, they still found ways to hold on to those rituals. He thought about the way society often treats the elderly, especially those with dementia, as if they are past the point of needing affection or passion. As if intimacy is the privilege of the young. But the truth was right in front of him. His parents were living proof that love and physical connection don't have an expiration date. His mother, in her late 70s, still blushed when talking about her husband. His father, even when he couldn't remember what day it was, somehow remembered how to reach for her hand. And maybe, Steve thought, that was more important than remembering what he had for breakfast. Of course, the practical worries didn't disappear overnight. Alzheimer's doesn't pause for romance. There were still risks of accidents, of moments when his father would become disoriented, of his mother being overwhelmed. But Steve found himself wrestling with a deeper question: what does quality of life really mean? Is it only about safety, medical management, and predictable routines? Or is it also about preserving the sparks of humanity that make life worth living in the first place? The decision no longer looked so simple. If he moved his father to assisted living, yes, the professional care would be reliable, the risks would be lower, and his mother would get relief. But at what cost? His father might be safer, but lonelier. His mother might sleep more soundly at night, but lose the most meaningful part of her days. That kind of trade-off wasn't something Steve could quantify on paper or resolve in a family meeting. It was messy, emotional, and deeply personal. When Steve shared his discovery with a few close friends, the reactions were mixed. Some laughed awkwardly, others nodded knowingly, and one even admitted, honestly, that's beautiful. Most people would be lucky to have that kind of connection at any age. Steve found himself agreeing. What he had thought of as a potential complication was, in fact, a kind of lesson. His parents were teaching him that intimacy is more than an act, it's a language, a way of holding on to each other when so much else slips away. There was also something quietly radical about it. In a culture where conversations about elder intimacy are often hushed, treated as taboo, his parents were living proof that it doesn't just exist, it thrives. It challenges stereotypes about aging bodies and fading desires. It challenges assumptions that dementia strips away all sense of agency or affection. Instead, it revealed a layer of humanity that doesn't vanish with diagnosis. For Steve, the moment shifted his role as a son. He wasn't just the caretaker weighing logistics anymore. He became a witness to something raw and powerful about love. His father's Alzheimer's wasn't the end of their marriage, it had simply transformed it. His mother's devotion wasn't just about managing pills and meals, it was about choosing, day after day, to remain a partner in the truest sense. And yes, part of that meant honoring their private, sexy time, not as a quirky side note but as a core part of their life together. The story doesn't end with a neat resolution. Steve didn't rush to sign paperwork for assisted living, but he didn't ignore the risks either. Instead, he found himself taking a more nuanced approach, supporting his mother with extra resources, bringing in part-time help, checking in more often, and making sure they had what they needed to stay safe while still preserving their rituals. He understood now that his job wasn't only to manage decline but to protect dignity, even when it appeared in forms he hadn't expected. Over time, he also found that the story shifted how he thought about his own life. Watching his parents cling to intimacy despite the shadows of Alzheimer's made him reconsider how he approached love, connection, and vulnerability. It reminded him that relationships are sustained not by grand gestures but by small, repeated acts of closeness, acts that can survive even when memory doesn't. In telling this story, Steve sometimes jokes with a sheepish grin, "I walked in on my parents' sexy time, and it changed how I see life." But beneath the humor is a profound truth. What he witnessed was not awkwardness but resilience, not embarrassment but devotion. In a world that often measures aging in losses, his parents had carved out a space of defiance, a way of saying, "We are still us." And that, Steve realized, was worth protecting. Alzheimer's is often framed as a thief, stealing identities, histories, and independence. And it is all those things. But sometimes, against all odds, it leaves behind a core that cannot be stolen. The capacity to love, to seek comfort in touch, to remember in the body what the mind forgets. That's what Steve saw in his parents, and that's why the decision he once thought was straightforward became something much deeper. It wasn't just about where his father lived, it was about what kind of life was still possible for both his parents. In the end, Steve understood that caregiving isn't only about extending years or reducing risks. It's about preserving humanity in all its forms, even the ones that make us uncomfortable to talk about. His parents' daily ritual wasn't a complication to be managed, it was a treasure to be respected. It was proof that even in the face of one of the most devastating diseases, love could still find a way to flourish. And perhaps, for them, that was the best medicine of all. Would you like me to shape this into a spoken YouTube script style with a storyteller's rhythm, emotional pauses, and natural flow, or keep it as a written article narration?